one thing so the event is going to be recorded and is going to be on our channel, online YouTube channel after. So I think that in the interest of time, I'm going to slowly start after I choose my channel, forgive me. So in the interest of time, I'm going to slowly start. And first of all, let me welcome you. Hello, everyone. My name is Maja Kominko, and I'm pleased to welcome you on behalf of our project, Architectural Heritage Preservation in Times of War, the Ukrainian Model. This project focuses on architectural documentation and conservation course for the student at the Kharkiv School of Architecture and a training program for teachers from architectural schools across Ukraine to help them develop conservation courses in their institution. The project ends this June, very soon, which is why this time, instead of doing proper introduction and before we start proper webinar, I would like to express my gratitude to three wonderful colleagues without whom this project would not have happened. First of all, Vera Orlovska, who is here and who is visible, who brought us together. Then Darina Ozhikhanova, I don't know if Darina made it here, but she coordinated all the teaching and did it wonderfully. And then last but very much not least, here also invisible, wonderful Yuri Pripodobny, who from fantastic Skeiron, who has led all digital documentation part of the project. And I would like to take the moment to celebrate these three absolutely wonderful people who made this project a success and who did so with boundless kindness, generosity, and grace. It was a real honor to work with you and a real pleasure. So I'm delighted that we can celebrate the end of our webinar series and the end of our project with two absolutely illustrious and wonderful speakers. Our main speaker for today is Dr. Mounir Bouchenaki, who really needs no introduction because he is one of the leading voices in the field of heritage preservation and one of the people who transformed and immeasurably strengthened the field. Dr. Bouchenaki is an Algerian historian and archaeologist. He is the director of Arab Regional Center for World Heritage in Bahrain. He was UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Culture, the Director of World Heritage Center, and the Director General of ICCROM. Dr. Bouchenaki is also the chair of the Scientific Committee of Lviv, and in this capacity, he has guided and supported the foundation assistance to Ukrainian heritage. But we will start with an introduction from another person who needs no introduction, Anastasia Bondar, a Deputy Minister for Culture and Strategic Communication of Ukraine. She is a specialist on international relations in European politics, as well as digital development. But for the last 3 years, she has been one of the leaders of the cultural heritage preservation in Ukraine. We are honored that she agreed to open our webinar with short introduction. Anastasia will have to leave for a different event after that, but we are very grateful that she found the time to be here. Following her presentation, we will turn over to Dr. Bouchenaki, who will speak for about 60 minutes, and after that we will have question and answer session. Over to you, Anastasia.
Dear Maya colleagues, thank you very much. Since you have introduced and said that we have an outstanding interpreter today, so I decided to speak English just in order to speak and talk to our international colleagues and those who have joined from abroad. But also I'm very happy that we are having the possibility for our Ukrainian representatives to be joining such seminars and be listening to such great specialist in the field like Mounir. And you know, actually I have prepared some of the theses today about some of the destructions which we have in Ukraine. But as we have talked a little bit priorly, I think that I would like to take a different approach. It's clear that we are in the 4th year of war and the numbers are devastating in all the heritage destructions, and it's clear that the Ukrainian heritage was not a sudden but a target which was particularly targeted to be destroyed. And I think that this is something what leads us to some new questions we should be asking ourselves while we are having such discussions is about how this war and the full-scale invasion in Ukraine actually can influence the future development of the international law and the international organizations. I'm sure Mounir will today share his experience of work in different complicated regions of the world, which also experienced the aggression or the military situations in their countries. And what would be specifically interesting, I think, to hear for today's listeners is what is the difference with Ukraine right now? Because we are hearing a lot that Ukraine differs, that now we continue to live inside of the conflict, which differs much from the conflicts which happened before, when there was no opportunity to enter the country and actually try to protect the heritage inside the conflict. And this is the situation we're continuing to live in. And this kind of things, unfortunate things, they are building a kind of, expertise from experience, I would call that. And I think that this is something what should for sure influence the way the international law develops, because it's now showing us on how fragile this legal part of the accountability and actual the violations of especially the 1954 Hague Convention is, and on what we should be doing and how we should be using as Ukraine as well as the international community based on the Ukrainian experience, proposals to use our experience and to change the way all the international agreements are working out. So I think that this is something what I would really love to hear today from Mounir and your experience and point of view. And I think that this is very timely on when Ukraine can show itself not only as the victim of this war, but also as somebody who is eager to use its example and unfortunate experience to change and adopt the international legislation to the changed world, comparing to approximately 100 years ago when all these agreements were about to be signed. So this is one thing. And another thing for sure, since I'm deputy also responsible for the digital transformation, I want also to think about the innovations. And Ukraine is very well known and even called in Europe the digital tiger due to all the innovations which we have done in our governmental services and digitalization of these services. So what I really want also to look into is on how we can also use this situation with all the destructions and possibilities to use the innovative technologies for the protection, for recovery procedures, and where Ukraine can show also its success. And I'm very grateful that Yurko Prepodobny also is here. They are the great team who already is showing great results in all the digital expertise which they are showing and experiencing here during this 3+ years. So I am not going to take more time. I am sure that today's conversation is going to be not only useful but also very interesting. I will stay here muted for a while just to listen, as I am privileged to be here. And thank you very much, Maya, for the invitation.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anastasia, for being here. And thank you for these wonderful remarks. This is, I mean, you have been consistently one of the leading voices in the whole discussion of Ukrainian heritage preservation. So we are really grateful for your words. And it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Mounir, ask him to unmute himself and tell me whether I should share his PowerPoint already or not yet.
Good afternoon to all of you, particularly to Mrs. Anastasia and Dr. Maya Kominko. I am very honored, very much honored to participate to the last session of this important training and capacity building initiated by Dr. Maya Kominko. She's a friend, and I was very happy to work with her when she was in charge of the projects in Lviv. Now, of course, this training course is coming also at a very important moment for all of us, whether at UNESCO, at the international organization, ICCROM, and also the NGOs dealing with the situation of intentional destruction of cultural heritage in contemporary times. I would like to recall the fact that cultural heritage has unfortunately always been disfigured by successive wars in the world. But I would like also to point out that the recent decades, I mean, since the 70s and 80s, this cultural heritage, to my opinion, became a prime target of extremists and groups intervening in a number of countries. In addition to the sites devastated by military action, it is also worth noting the significant increase in the illicit trafficking of works of art, as well as the intensification of clandestine excavations in a number of countries where an incredible wind of violence is blowing, and which I will present with some examples now. At the end of the Second World War, the world discovers with astonishment the extent of disasters in different regions of the world, with appalling figures for a number of victims, wounded and displaced, figure of such magnitude that the consciousness of man has been shaken. Works of art of inestimable value were looted, others destroyed forever. In the aftermath of this war, the belligerent powers, aware of the disaster suffered and eager for it to be repeated, decided to create the United Nations in New York in 1945. With one of its specialized bodies, namely UNESCO, with its headquarters in Paris, and with the aim of helping to maintain peace in the world. As you well know, if there is one area where UNESCO has acquired its credentials with its advisory bodies, such as ICCROM, ICCROM, IUCN, as well as with a number of NGOs and foundations that have developed during the second half of the 20th century, it is in the field of action in the preservation and enhancement of cultural heritage that UNESCO has obtained this reputation. UNESCO is celebrating its 80th anniversary, and in accordance with Article 1 of its constitution, which is still relevant, its mission, and I quote, is to ensure the conservation and protection of the universal heritage of books, works of art, or other monuments of historical and scientific interest, and to recommend to the peoples concerned international conventions to this effect. So we see that for more than 7 decades, UNESCO standard-setting activities have focused on the protection and promotion of cultural heritage in the broader sense within a coherent and comprehensive legal framework encompassing normative texts that extend between 1954 and 2005. And here I really thank the Director Anastasia, the Deputy Minister Anastasia Bondar, for speaking in particular about the 94 Convention, its two protocols. And only 2 days ago, I was with two bright lawyers, Professor Anna Vdorak from Australia, Professor Alicia Burduk from Poland, and we were really speaking within the association as created, which is called UNESCO UNITWIN, about how we can see the evolution of the 94 Convention in front of what is happening in the world in terms of wars and conflicts. A very eminent jurist, whom I know, not anymore in this world, Professor Jiri Toman, wrote, "War is the enemy of man. It is also the enemy of the best that man has produced, art, culture, monuments, or the entire historical and cultural heritage." So we have been the conflicts developing since the second half of the 20th century and the beginning, of course, of this century. And more, we see the symbols of culture to be destroyed. And in some cases, with the aim to destroy the memory and identity of a people. This type of destruction is leading the international community to react in a more determined and united manner. And I wish to show you some concrete examples. The UNESCO Convention most frequently used in these circumstances are, on the one hand, the 1954 Hague Convention and its second protocol, adopted at The Hague in 1999, concerning the protection of cultural heritage in the event of armed conflict, and on the other hand, the Convention on the means of prohibiting and preventing export, import, and transfer of illicit ownership of cultural property. As we all see, the nature of wars has changed, and this is what I have seen since I joined UNESCO in 1982, when we were faced with the civil war in Lebanon, when we have seen also for the first time in December 1991, the destruction of a city, the damage done to a city which was on the World Heritage List. I mentioned Dubrovnik. We have unfortunately seen that during the internal conflicts, not only the population is one of the main victims, but also its cultural heritage. And unfortunately, this cultural heritage became a prime target for the warring factions. These conflicts, if they no longer have the international devastated character of the two great world wars, for the 1914 and 1940, they have nevertheless a dramatic consequence to continue to erupt for nearly 45 years now, since the war between Iraq and Iran in the 80s, the civil war in Lebanon between 70s and 90s, the long conflict in Cambodia between the 70s and the 90s, the long conflict in Afghanistan between the 80s and the beginning of the 21st century, the breakup of Yugoslavia in the years 2002-2005, the wars and crises in Iraq since the 90s until the recent attack by Daesh in the years 24-27, the interminable conflict in Syria, and now we see that there are some new solutions arriving, the attacks by the Islamic group Ansar-Eddin against Tombouctou in Mali, the attack on the Bardo Museum in Tunisia, the international conflict in Libya, the conflict in Yemen, and unfortunately, up to date, the long conflict in Ukraine and the conflict in Sudan. So we are really faced with a very terrible situation. And I must say that in my presentation that I sent to Maya, I showed a great part of this crisis and how we tried to react. So now we can start the presentation that I sent to Maya with the title Cultural Heritage and the Recent Armed Conflicts. Next. The United Nations, UNESCO, as I said, was created to contribute for the construction of peace, for human development, or intercultural dialogue in an era of globalization through education, science, culture, communication, and information. This is the base of what UNESCO was, created for. Next. And this is why there is this famous, mentioned by Archibald MacLeish, since wars begins in the minds of men, it is in the mind of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. That ignorance of each other has been common calamity throughout the history of mankind, and that suspicion and mistrust between the people of the world through which their differences have all too often been broken into war. Next. Here I want to show you a picture that I took after the fall of the Taliban in 2001. And of course, I used this preamble of the Constitution, but I also looked at the leaflet put by the Afghani themselves in front of what you see here, the National Museum of Kabul, totally destroyed, no more windows, no more door, and thousands of objects stolen or destroyed. And it says, and I think it's a very important quotation, a nation stays alive when its culture stays alive. Next. The convention is the only legal instrument on which we can use, when we are working in either in governmental institutions or in private institutions dealing with cultural heritage. We have actually 134 states as parties, so it's not a convention totally signed by all member states in the world. And but the two protocols, and particularly the second protocol, which was developed during the time I was in charge of the division of cultural heritage at UNESCO, was trying to address the issues that the main terms of the convention, when we were not able to use them because of the new way of wars, and also because of the fact that the belligerent are not taking any care about the international texts like the Hague Convention. And this is exactly what my predecessor said. Next. Illicit traffic is one consequence of the wars. I'm not going to speak a lot about it because it may need another presentation. So next we see that the Convention of 1970 is now more and more adopted by the countries, and more return of cultural property is done during these last few years. I can show you, for example, a slide showing how objects have been returned. Next, returned to Cambodia, and then we move to the recent civil wars, like the one in Syria. I was following, of course, this war, and in Syria, we have seen a large number of sites, including some inscribed on the World Heritage List, suffered, and then we received terrible images from the prestigious Medina of Aleppo. We have also seen the extraordinary site of Palmyra. So next, we have some figures. Here you can see a very simple map showing the major sites known in Syria. Most of them are recognized as a World Heritage List. But when you see the next picture, you can see the extent of damage. For example, here, Aleppo, which was one of the most beautiful historic city in the Middle East and in the Arab region as a whole. It was terribly damaged, but not only damaged by building destroyed, but also by the fire inside the old traditional market. We have also seen how the Crac des Chevaliers, the Crusader castle, was damaged, as well as the very, very famous citadel. Of course, it is so huge and so present by its stone and its architecture that it is not destroyed, but is badly damaged. Next. Here, the fire, a photo of the fire of one of the market suit in Aleppo. There was a work done during the recent years by the Aga Khan Trust Fund for the restoration of some shops and some traditional structures in the Aleppo. Next, please. Here you see something which is absolutely terrible. How was the temple of Bel in Palmyra present for centuries and used by thousands of tourists going to visit the site of Palmyra? And then there was this occupation of the group, terrorist group of Daesh. And you see in the next slide, next, how this temple was demolished. It was not only demolished, terribly, but it was filmed by the Daesh terrorists to show how they were, using their methods of the destruction to demolish completely the Temple of Bel in 2015. Next. I was in Syria in 2017 when Mrs. Irina Bokova was the director of UNESCO, and she asked me to participate to a visit by a number of UNESCO ambassadors to Palmyra. Next. And here we can see on the spot the remains of the main door of the Temple of Bel. It remains nothing. It's something that will take not maybe seven years or 10 years to obtain a restitution, a partial restitution, because many of the blocks became completely powder. Next. Here I was with the Director General of Museum and Antiquities of Syria, Dr. Ma'moun Abdul Karim, who was really very, very active in trying to save what could be saved in the site of Palmyra. But there are many, as I said, many of the sites which are not on the World Heritage List, which have also been destroyed. Next. Here you can see the state of the Museum of Palmyra. It is something that it's incredible that they were damaging everything inside the Museum of Palmyra. Only some objects have been not completely damaged, and I met during my visit to Palmyra two Polish experts restoring one of these statues, one of the remain of a statue of a lion after the destruction. Next. And here we have some objects which are now recuperated and slowly restored, not directly in Syria, but here I took this picture in the Museum of Muscat in the Sultanate of Oman, and people from the National Museum are helping the restoration of what has not been totally destroyed in the National Museum of Palmyra. Next. There is another war which is terrible and not, unfortunately, not finished, is Yemen. Yemen was called in the past Arabia Felix. That means the happy Arabia, because it's a country with such a long tradition of cultures and civilizations, and the war came next, and you can see this is the map of Yemen. It is a very large country. For the moment, there are only 4 sites inscribed on the World Heritage List. Sana'a, which is the capital. Then you have Shibam in the desert. It is a very, very important city that historians and architects are calling the Manhattan of the desert. Then you have a very nice city in the plain of Tihama, which is called Zabid. These are the 3 cultural sites. And then there is one site which is on the right part of the map, which is called Socotra. It is an island in the Indian Ocean. And this island, totally outside many things, has a very, very important natural heritage recognized today as a World Heritage Site. Next. Here you see this city where in the 80s, UNESCO launched an international campaign for the safeguarding of this marvelous architecture and marvelous urban planning. Unfortunately, next you will see that even a World Heritage Site like Sana'a was targeted during the war and many buildings destroyed. Next. Here you see another picture showing the bombing inside the old city of Sana'a. Next. I see that my language is English. I didn't switch.
But
Sorry.
Mounir, it's fine. I think that you're in the right channel. I think that we can hear you very well, and I believe that
no, because there is confirming your speaking language, and they put Ukrainian. Unfortunately, I don't know this language, and no, I continue in English. Okay,
yes, please. Thank you so much.
So these are another picture of the very, very heavy damage done to the Yemeni cultural heritage. Next. Here it's a very important castle, which is in the center of Yemen, in a city called which was the first capital, and this castle is also subject to destruction. Now there are some works done by the World Monuments Fund in this city. Next. Here you can see restoration done with the support of Alif in this city, completely built in mud and earth, which is called Shibam. And in the lower part of the picture, you see one Yemeni lady collaborating with Alif and with the UNESCO office in Bahrain for the restoration of the houses in mud brick. Next. Now I want to move to the recent mission I was undertaking in the north part of Iraq between 2019 up to 2022-23. Next. It is a part of Iraq where we have the very old city of Mosul. You see here in the map, you can see in the upper part of the map, in green color, it's the Kurdish part of Iraq with the city of Erbil, which is also having its citadel on the World Heritage List. But the major destruction in these recent years between 2014, 2015, up to 2018, it was in the city of Mosul. And next, you will see the damage in the city of Mosul. This is one of the pictures that I took when we arrived to this city, which was absolutely a ghost city. Nearly nobody there except some, you can see in the left part, a military car. We were protected, of course, by the Iraqi army when we went with my colleagues, and in particular with the actual director of the World Heritage Center, Mr. Lazar Elundu. We visited the site. We worked with the Iraqi Department of Antiquities, and we decided to follow a project that Mrs. Azoulay, the Director General, launched with the support of funds from the United Arab Emirates, the restoration of an old mosque and the restoration of 2 churches. Next. Here, another view of the damage. This city was a city where all communities were living together. Unfortunately, you see that it's nothing is conserved. I mean, most of the old buildings have been destroyed. Next. So there was this project to restore this one of the oldest mosque called Mosque Al-Nouri, dating from the 11th century, and not only the mosque, but also the minaret next, close to the mosque, was bombed. This is the inside of the mosque. Next. And this is the remain of the minaret, which is fortunately now totally restored. So here, a team of architects, Iraqi engineers, and also a team from Italy under a lady who is a very bright restorer. They now have totally restored the minaret exactly as it was. And this was the request of the population, the representative of the population in Mosul. Next. Here, another view of the minaret for the beginning of the work of restoration. Next. It is a big symbol for the population, and below we have had archaeological excavation and some discovery. This is also happening sometime, that the restoration works are also followed by some new discoveries, and I am archaeologist by training, and of course I was very, very pleased to work with my colleagues in Mosul about the preservation of this site, which was not known and of course not touched by the crisis. Next. Another picture of this very important discovery below the Mosque of Al-Nouri. Next. Here, of course, I was going to Mosul, always protected by military from the Iraqi army, because the situation up to the last few years, 24 and even beginning of this year, we are not sure about the security, and our mission are always protected by the army. Next. Here we are in the restoration of a church, because also, as I said, all monuments were destroyed. All communities were targeted. And we had an important work here with the representative of UNESCO and the architects working in the basement of the church which is called the Clock Church. Next. One of the buildings under restoration, which is now transformed into a cultural center inside the city of Mosul. Next. This was another aspect of the restoration, the reconstruction of a school. So nothing was, everything was targeted, and even a school was demolished. So this was among this project, which is called Reviving Mosul Old City, restoration of an old school. Next. This is the picture of the work of the school, which is a reconstruction. It's not a restoration, it's a reconstruction. Next. And here we have, of course, the different buildings in the old city, buildings of high-level architecture style, again, totally destroyed and now restored and reused by the owners of these buildings. Next. What was done in a very strong manner with the support of this fund from the Emirates, but also for all the churches in Mosul, is the restoration of the major church. Here on the right, you have the head of the Dominican responsible of the church. Next. This is the church before the restoration, and in the hall on the tower is the famous clock, which was also stolen. Now all this building is totally restored, and now it is in use. The Dominicans came, and Madame Azoulay, put the first stone for the ring. We had the cloche. Now they say the word, the cloche, were ringing, and the Christian population is returning to Mosul and using this very important church, which is at about 200 meters from the mosque. This is another aspect that we at UNESCO we were always contemplating and assisting the intercultural presence. The communities were living normally before this crisis and this destruction. Next. This is the interior of the church called the Clock Church, and you can see that most of the features have been restored. We received ICCROM worked a lot to train a restorer with the help of the Italian restorer in paintings, in stone carved and stone decorated. Next. This was the most damaged church in the city of Mosul. It is called Al-Tahira Church. It lost totally its ceiling, most of the pillars, and this was one of the largest projects in the restoration inside the old city of Mosul. And you can see, the pictures is speaking by itself. It's so badly damaged. Next. Restoration started, consolidation of the pillars, excavation to find the right level for the consolidation of the floor. Next. And the museum, of course. Here you see one of my colleagues on the left, Professor Daniele Pini from Ferrara University, with one member of UNESCO in Mosul, and also on the right, the director of the Museum of Mosul. This museum was very badly damaged. Next, you can see the pictures. Look at inside the museum, even the floor was damaged, and all the lamassu, you know, these stones, these important stones decorated during the Sumerian period, they were, you know, transformed into nearly small blocks. Here we have two major interventions. One is the intervention of the World Monuments Fund for the structure, for the building, because the architect who built this building is among the modernists in Iraq, Professor Makiye. He's not anymore in this world, but he was very famous in the 60s and 70s. And inside, it's the Louvre. The Louvre is working, the restorator of the Louvre are working inside the museum for the restoration and the training of the Iraqi member of the Museum of Mosul. Next. Here, a picture of hope. I like to see that finally, after all what I showed you in terms of destruction, there is now a return slowly to the life, a return to the normal life with you know, these children showing us, looking at us with the, you know, a look of hope. This, for me, it's very, very important to see that now, slowly, the population in Mosul is returning, and it's a good result after all, when they have seen so bad damage to their houses, to their monuments, and to also their intangible culture. Next. Here you see Madame Azoulay with the signature of the agreement with the Minister of Culture of the United Arab Emirates on the left, Madame Nour Al-Kaabi, behind her, the ambassador of Iraq to UNESCO, behind the director of the Dominican congregation in Mosul, and on the right is also the representative of the Dominican in Paris, and of course, Madame Azoulay signing the agreement, which was now, it's now implemented completely, and all the monuments which were subject to restoration are now returned to their owners. Next. Now we come to one of the terrible war that Deputy Minister Anastasia spoke about it, and I have my colleagues are there, those who worked with me, like my colleague Italian, Madame Chiara Dezzi Bardeschi, but also Krista Picat. I mean, I have most of my colleagues when I was in charge at UNESCO are now in Kiev or in Lviv, and they are following the unfortunate situation of destruction and damage to the historic monuments, the sites, the museum. But in addition, in my capacity as president of the ALIF, Scientific Committee, I am following with my colleagues and with our colleagues from Ukraine, and we had a conference only 10 days ago in Geneva, where a deputy minister was with us, thanking ALIF in particular, and also UNESCO, of course, which was from the beginning present together with the colleagues in Ukraine. Next. Here, my colleagues gave me the latest picture of the events, which are, showing the different places where there were the explosions, the battles, and always what is our concern, the situation of monuments and sites, not again to forget the population. I'm always saying to my counterpart, the colleagues with whom I work, that we are not blind when we go to the sites which are subject to destruction. Of course, our work as archaeologists, conservators, architects, engineers is to see how to protect this cultural heritage. But we don't forget the situation of the population, because this is absolutely important, not to consider that the population is forgotten. On the contrary. So what I have as figures, but maybe you have had already, as of 14 September 2024, UNESCO has verified damage to 190 sites, 80 religious ones, 13 museums, 36 historic buildings, 34 buildings dedicated to cultural activities, 17 monuments, and 10 libraries. To meet the most urgent need, UNESCO raised more than 67 million over the past 3 years, and Japan also supported UNESCO with a big amount to UNESCO, and these funds are used to implement dozens of short and medium-term actions in the field of culture, heritage education, and the media. As I said a few minutes ago, UNESCO opened the liaison office in Kiev to coordinate all the operation, and now we have a staff present in Ukraine. Next. This is the figures that I received from my colleagues as of 16 April, that in last month, UNESCO has verified damage to 485 sites since February 2022, 149 religious sites, 257 buildings of historical value or artistic interest, 32 monuments, 18 libraries and archives, and 2 archaeological sites. Next. These are some pictures that I received from my colleagues in Ukraine. Next. Here is the team working in Ukraine. Some of the colleagues working in Ukraine. Next. Now, unfortunately, we have also to mention another terrible crisis in a very large country like Sudan in Africa. And in Sudan, the recent news are absolutely terrible. I know my colleagues from Poland are very close to the Sudanese experts, because for many, many years, Poland was helping the creation of the National Museum in Khartoum. Poland was restoring the Paleo-Christian paintings and frescoes of Faras. All these the objects, all these frescoes are in big danger. Next. And here I received, so here also, I am in contact, like for Ukraine, in contact with my colleagues who are in Cairo or in Port Sudan, which is considered a place with some safety to see what is happening in terms of destruction of cultural heritage. And this is a picture of the National Museum, very badly damaged in Khartoum. Next. Another picture of the damage done to the National Museum. So we are in contact with our Sudanese colleagues. Some of them are refugees in Cairo, some are in Port Sudan, and some are outside. So we met last week in Geneva, one colleague from the Department of Antiquities of Sudan, trying to continue to be in contact with her family and the colleagues, and to obtain some more information about what is happening to the Sudanese cultural heritage. Next. And finally, I mean, you are all aware of what happens in Gaza and the terrible situation that started from nearly 2 years. And what for UNESCO is another concern is the fact that in this war in Gaza, the cultural heritage is also the target. Unfortunately, we have documentation coming from people from inside Gaza. Next. And here you see some of the pictures of monuments. Here also, everything was demolished. The buildings, the church, the mosque, the schools. And again, we are faced with the humanitarian terrible situation, but also with the cultural terrible situation in Gaza. We were able, through our colleagues with the UNESCO office in Ramallah and also with Alif, to make some collect of objects after the destruction. Next, I don't know if I have the picture. Yes, here you see a picture showing the church before and the church after the destruction. Next. Here, another picture of one important church. Again, here we are exactly in the same situation that I mentioned for Mosul. Here, the community of Palestinians living in Gaza was a community belonging to different religion, to Christian religion, Muslim religion. They were living together. And when I went a few years ago to Gaza with the Biblical School of Jerusalem to see the archaeological site, because the site is very rich in terms of archaeological sites. UNESCO inscribed one site of Gaza last year on the World Heritage List and the World Heritage in danger. I think that here also, once we all hope there will be a ceasefire, there is a huge work to be done for assessing the damages and then preparing, as we have done in Sarajevo, in Mostar, in Mosul, in Syria, to do a plan of action and to start working for the restoration of the cultural heritage. And we shouldn't forget also that not only the tangible heritage is in danger, is suffering, but also the intangible cultural heritage. When you think that 2 million Sudanese fled the country, are now refugees either in South Sudan or in Egypt or in countries surrounding, they are losing also their intangible cultural heritage. Next. Some latest data that I obtained from my colleagues at UNESCO. Next. And I finish with this picture. You know, we at UNESCO and also in all the institutions dealing with cultural heritage, we are always saying, moins de discours, plus d'action. We shouldn't spend too much time in speeches. We should do action. Action is the only way to solve some situations. Next. This is one an encounter we had in the Principality of Monaco with Prince Albert, with Madame Azoulay, and I am working with my colleagues in the Department of Culture of Monaco on a project that started 20 years ago, which is called Monaco and the Mediterranean. And Monaco is helping financially Alif among the countries showing interest and support to cultural heritage. Next. And I finish with this picture because this is symbolic. A nation stays alive when its culture stays alive. So in conclusion, I would like to clarify that I tried through a quick presentation of conflict situation to show to what extent it is possible to be on the ground and to provide support. And I so hope for and so strongly to colleagues. I think about colleagues who live daily in countries that suffer from conflicts on a daily basis, to the fear of collateral damages, the bomb or shrapnel, not to mention, of course, the glaring lack of minimum resources to ensure their day-to-day survival. It is in this situation that civil society can play a decisive role, hence the importance of the action of ICCROM, IUCN, World Monuments Fund, Getty Conservation Institute, Europa Nostra, ALIF, and many others that have been playing for more than 3 decades a big role. The intentional destruction of cultural heritage. And of course, I had in my presentation some other pictures about the Buddha of Bamiyan. I had a long history about the Buddha. The intentional destruction of cultural heritage that I briefly presented undoubtedly made the international community react with a unanimous burst of condemnation, appealing not only to the normative text of UNESCO, but also to those of the International Criminal Court of Justice from the moment when these destructions were qualified by the Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, as well as by the successive Director General, Mr. Federico Mayor, Mr. Koishura Matsura, Mrs. Irina Bokova, and Mrs. Audrey Azoulay. They were always qualifying this destruction as crimes against culture and crimes against humanity. The recent hotbed of mounting tensions and literally armed clashes in various regions raised concern about conservation of cultural heritage. The probability of destruction of a monument during armed conflict is many times greater than such risk in peacetime. Hostilities lead to the total suspension of legal norms designed to ensure a regime of preservation of cultural values, while ordinary measures for the preservation of cultural heritage become inapplicable. Armed conflict in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Africa, led to massive attacks on monuments which have raised a number of urgent issues in the field of heritage preservation, their solution requiring immediate action and the consolidation of the efforts of the international cultural communities. From cherished historic monuments and museums to living heritage practices and contemporary art forms, culture enriches our lives in countless ways and help build inclusive, innovative, and resilient communities. Protecting and safeguarding the world cultural and natural heritage and supporting creativity and dynamic cultural sectors are fundamental to addressing the challenges of our time, from climate change to poverty, inequality, the digital divide, and even more complex emergencies and conflicts. UNESCO is convinced that no development can be sustainable without a strong culture component. Indeed, only a human-centered approach to development based on mutual respect and open dialogue among cultures can lead to a lasting peace. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, dear Mounir, for this beautiful and very moving presentation. I mean, it's difficult not to be crushed a little bit by by seeing how much has been destroyed, how much we all have lost to these wars. So thank you for these beautiful moments of hope that you have given us through the presentation, and above all, thank you for the work that you do, because you have been instrumental in so many of the projects of rebuilding, reconstruction, but also prevention of destruction during the war. I know that there will be lots of questions. I already have received some, but what I would suggest is that we could just to remind everyone that you can ask a question in the chat, and then we're going to read it out. But also you can just raise your hand and ask a question aloud. Whatever you prefer, you can ask a question in Ukrainian. It will be translated by our wonderful Oliena, our translator. But in my prerogative as the convener of this webinar, Mounir, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to kick off with the questions. Thank you so very much for speaking so movingly also about the colleagues who are in the first line of defense, who work on the ground, often taking great risks. And I wanted to ask you, is there anything we can do collectively as the field, as international community of colleagues, of professionals, to better support these colleagues who work on the ground?
Yes, this is a very important question, Maya. We already with Federico Mayor, but more with Koichiro Matsura, we were trying to see if we can, I mean, we people working in the field of conservation, in the field of protection, if there could be a support from the army. Because you know, the main problem that we have for any of these conflicts that I, mentioned in the beginning, and there are now so many, we were able to go only when we were protected by the army of the UN. I must confess that I went to Sarajevo and to Mostar only when the military from the UN, the Peace Corps of the UN were protecting us. I was able to go to Cambodia, to Angkor, immediately after the peace agreement of 1991 in Paris. I was going there, but I was protected by the military. I was going to Vukovar when it was occupied by the Serbian army, but I was surrounded by military. I mean, we considered at a certain time, I speak about me because, but that means any other colleague, any other people in charge of cultural heritage and willing to do something when there is a situation of crisis and damage to heritage, we need to have a protection. So there was an agreement with the Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy showing that Italian army would be ready to be present. But unfortunately, it is a complex issue because not any army can go into a country if there is no security, the UN Security Council, a meeting, political meeting in order to approve an intervention of military. So we are, in fact, for example, Sudan, I know that many of my colleagues would like to go to Sudan, but the situation is too dangerous because this is not a war between one country against another country where you can call for the provision of the 94 Convention. It is a fight between two armies inside, two Sudanese armies. So you cannot have a protection in this case. The strip of Gaza is closed to everyone. Nobody can enter for anything when it is such situation. Your question is very important. So we raised it a long time ago with the Blue Shield. And this was done after the war in Iraq. We were meeting in Belgium, we were meeting in Paris, and the Blue Shield was created to be a kind of presence, not military, but at least using the shield of the Convention of 54 to have the protection, a kind of protection for the monument. But still, I know that it is not a problem which is not yet solved, and I'm glad that Deputy Minister Anastasia said that we have to look again at the normative text for the protection of cultural heritage.
Thank you so much, Mounir. This is a wonderful answer. And I'm just going to say that there in the chat, there are lots of expression of thanks to you for your lecture, but also for your work in many countries. The one that I would like to particularly mention is Afghanistan. We all are very appreciative of everything that you have done. And I know that Vera, our dear moderator Vera, has a series of very, very good questions. So Vera, I'm going to encourage you to unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, dear Maya. I'm going to ask my questions in Ukrainian, and also I would like to encourage all my colleagues in the audience to write your questions in the language which is convenient for you, either Ukrainian or English. So, Mr. Mounir, thank you very much for your presentation. And Maya really is right. I have a million questions because this is a unique opportunity to be able to listen to a person with such experience, years of experience, who has worked in various parts of the world. So I'm going to ask about the following. During the many years of your work, have you noticed any gaps or any opportunities to strengthen international policies to make conservation and heritage protection more efficient during military conflicts? Because you also mentioned that the key, the slogan on your last slide is moins de discours, plus d'action. Fewer words, more actions. So how can we improve international policies, and whether the international policies are too wordy? How to translate these words into actions?
Yes, thank you for this question. You can imagine that the colleagues in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, I mean, all those who are constituting what we call our community of cultural heritage, we are all very much concerned by the fact that sometimes we have not enough means. So one of the decisions taken recently by the committee dealing with the Convention of 1954 was to add an action of putting on the list of sites and monuments what they call the enhanced protection. Each country have the right now to see that if there is a problem and if there are, intervention, military intervention, intentional also destruction. Maybe if you are making an effort during peace to put and to publish a list of enhanced protection of sites and monuments. For the moment, according to my latest information, only Switzerland has already sent, and Austria sent, a list of enhanced protection. This is, when you speak to the lawyers, and I'm always in contact with lawyers in our work, the lawyers are saying, this convention, particularly 54, is not only to be implemented when there is a war, but it has to be discussed and analyzed by the various governmental authorities, local authorities, how to make sure that if there is a danger, protection is already. So we have to react in advance. For example, now that we know, unfortunately, that the Iraqi museum was stolen during the war in Iraq. The National Museum of Lebanon was stolen. Now I have seen, I cannot say if it is real or fake. I have seen in one social media a lorry taking objects from the Museum of Sudan. So in this case, ICCROM is already advising the curators, the responsible of museums, to put in place preventive measures in order to avoid a situation where, when there is a conflict, very often, and we know, because I have many colleagues working in a program at ICCROM called REORG. REORG means reorganization of the stores. Many museums, big museums, even in Europe, it's not in countries not having all the laws, all the traditions. They don't have, one is a proper identification and inventory of all objects. I give only one event. When in the 90s, the first, what was called the first Gulf crisis in Iraq, I received an archaeologist from Japan with 4 volumes with the list of objects which disappeared from museums in Iraq. And when we started to look at the volumes, it was only a number and a very short description: Sumerian seal, 3000 BC, statuette, ivory, etc. We have now, and Dr. Anastasia, we have now, fortunately, a technology which is so well advanced that identification, digitization, techniques of 3D can make a lot of progress in advance. Last month in Paris, at the Institut du Monde Arabe, there was an exhibition about 5,000 years of Palestinian heritage. And I was asking, but how can have this heritage now in Paris? In fact, there was an exhibition of Palestinian heritage in Geneva before the war, and this was constituting a very important testimony of the archaeological objects. Those who have worked now on this object are using all the new technologies to get a very complete and sophisticated inventory, because in case of damage, at least we have some recording. We know that there are thousands of objects in all the crises that I mentioned which disappeared. They will come back. Now we work with the international police, Interpol. I remember I signed an agreement when I was Assistant Director General for Culture. I signed an agreement in June 2005 with the Director General of Interpol, asking Interpol to create a body dealing with the illicit traffic and objects which are sometimes, stolen, but then they reappear in the market. Today, this is also the negative aspect of internet. We have some objects appearing on eBay. We have objects we are put on site for some 2-3 years, and people forget, and then they appear on the illegal market. Now, this is there is an awareness. We are working also with the Carabinieri in Italy. It's a team from the army dealing with cultural heritage, and particularly with the stolen cultural heritage. And they have a very good database, and they have a very good experience in fighting the illegal trade. Now, more and more, you can see now in the press that many museums, whether in the United States or in other parts of the world, are returning objects, because making an identification of the objects and knowing what is the provenance, what is the date of acquisition. I was faced also with this question by some lawyers here in France, and they said, but Mounir, what you are doing with your convention of 1970 is to empty the Museum of the North in favor of the Museum of the South. I said, no, One, the convention is of 1970. It is not retroactive. But what should be done by the Intergovernmental Committee for the Restitution and Return of Cultural Property is to look at the exact identification of the object when it is acquired. And now we had an ethical code signed by Sotheby's, by Christie's, all these big names of, because sometimes we are accused in a false manner. We are not against art, not against art trade, but when it is legal. It's when it is illegal that we, I mean, all of us in this meeting, we are all aware that this should not happen. Objects, if they are legally presented or legally sent. So, for example, you go to the Smithsonian and you see a temple from Egypt restored and presented, Dendera, inside the museum. But this was a gift from the government of Egypt to thank the efforts of United States when there was the campaign for Abu Simbel and Philae. This is not objects which were stolen, no. So we have to be very careful in the identification, and we have to use now the new technologies, as it was mentioned very rightly by Dr. Anastasia, to use the new technologies. Now we have very good startup specialists in 3D identification, in digitizing the objects, etc. And this is a resource in case we have a problem.
Wonderful answer, and thank you, Mounir. And there are lots of questions in the chat, but I'm just going to say briefly that when we talk about 3D documentation, we are really very proud to work with Skeiron, which is one of the most amazing 3D documentation organization in the world. So and they are single-handedly, they are very significantly, almost single-handedly contributing to saving the heritage. Sorry, I don't want to be unfair to others who document cultural heritage of Ukraine, but Skeiron has done an absolutely wonderful work on this. But Mounir, there is actually a follow-up. I don't know if you want to add something, but it's how we are all attuned, because actually the first question that we had in the chat was about how to prepare, how can we prepare and put in place anticipatory measures of evacuating and protecting movable and immovable cultural treasures and artifacts should the war break out. And this is from our friend Marvin.
Yes. First of all, I would like to say that this is such an important subject. You see that I spoke more from my heart than on paper. I prepared papers, but what I want to say is we are living in a difficult period. We are living in a period where sometimes the international law is not completely respected. We are looking at a situation which is going to force us, the community of conservators, of architects, and restorers, to be aware and to make sure that the authorities are aware in order to protect this heritage. This heritage is a richness. Whatever it is, intangible or tangible, it is part of our memory, it is part of our identity. If it is lost, we are losing something, you know. It's like if we're losing our hand or our leg, if we are not having a proper cultural environment. And I can assure you, when I see the joy of the Dominican priest in Mosul, I will never forget. I mean, in his eyes, he was so happy to return to his church, to see the community of believers chanting. I was present when the inauguration of the church was done, once it was recovered. I think this is important. It is part of our internal life. If we lose everything, what remains? So that's why my plea is always we have to continue to give resources to the associations, to the bodies in charge of cultural heritage. I launched with my colleagues at UNESCO a few years ago, Heritage in the Hand of Young People. It is important, very important, that we have to train the young generation, whether at the elementary school, whether at the grammar school, they were at universities, not to be only technicians knowing a very specific matter, but also to be human beings knowing what is the value of heritage.
That's a very important point. Thank you so much. Another very important point that you're raising, Mounir. I'm just going to say very briefly, unfortunately, today we do need to finish as close to 6:30, 7:30 Ukrainian time.
Yeah.
I think 5:30 Mounir's time. But we will send the questions, if Mounir agrees, we will send the questions via email, and then we will provide answers via email. But we have time for at least one more, and we have a question from our colleague in Ethiopia, which talks about the well, he thanks you for mentioning the plight of the heritage of Sudan, but he raises the problems with the heritage protection in Ethiopia, particularly in the north, where the heritage was damaged not only by, well, was damaged by the army as well. And is there any plan to collaborate with local professionals, archaeologists, and heritage experts there?
Absolutely. As I told you, Maya, before we start, Ethiopia was one of the destinations where I worked a lot. I was having, I must say, I was happy and proud to be received by Abuna Paulos, who was the Pope of the Ethiopian Church. I was happy to travel with him to Lalibela to start a project for conservation of this extraordinary site. I was with him in Aksum to see the place where the obelisk was returned with the support of UNESCO, and of course the Italian government and the Ethiopians were so happy and so proud. Of course, I was also going at the border between Ethiopia and Eritrea for the stela, which was damaged also during a fight between the two countries. So I am very well aware of what happened in Ethiopia during the last few years. And this is also part of the program that at UNESCO we launched, which is called Priority Africa. And I'm sure that in relation with our colleagues in Addis Ababa, with the committee, the Bureau of UNESCO, we have a UNESCO office in Addis Ababa, there will be, and there should be, a follow-up about the question of damages inflicted to the cultural heritage, particularly in the north of Ethiopia.
Dear Mounir, thank you so very much. And I see that that our colleague from Ethiopia has also thank you very much for wonderful answer. So I think that this is where we are going to stop on this note of hope. We won't be able to thank you enough, Mounir, for this wonderful, wonderful presentation, for teaching us so much, and for all the work that you have done. And I would just, before we finish, I would like to thank again our wonderful translator, Oliena, who has been with us throughout this webinar series, and she has been absolutely wonderful. And again, to our moderator, Vera, to our colleague, Vera, who has been bringing us together consistently, both in terms of projects and in terms of webinars. To Yuri Prepodobny, I'm sorry, Yuri, I still can't get your name right after working together for so many years.
It's always for me a pleasure to, give some information about this aspect. I think when you ask me, I immediately said, yes, Maya, I can do it. And like you, I want to thank the moderator, Madam Vera Orlovska, and also the translator, Oliena, and all those who are listening and maybe being also part of our, community of conservators and restorers and lawyers in helping save cultural heritage. And Maya, of course, a big thank to you for being so patient, because we had I had about 174 slides. It was too long. And she did a fantastic work to present you the maximum during this 1 hour and a half. Thank you so much.
Mounir, I feel like a complete barbarian for shortening your presentation, but I hope that there will be opportunity to have a whole lecture series on your wonderful work, and because we are all so grateful for every opportunity to learn from you. So thank you so very much, all of you, and we are looking forward to reconnecting in the future. And thank you once again, Mounir. It has been absolute joy.